everybody. Welcome to La Lista, a Latinx writers podcast. I'm your host, Ruben Mendive. And today we have a new guest here. It's a first for the pod, so I'm very excited. And so I like to start every episode by having my guests introduce themselves. So your name and how you identify for the people at home.
So my name is Paul Daniel Torres. My mom would want me to say Paul Daniel Torres Canesa. I identify as he, him, but you could also call me PD or Danny. So that's how the way that I kind of go.
Where are you from? And what's the short version? What's the long version?
The short version is I'm from Toronto, Ontario. Good old Canada there, bud. And the long version, though, is my parents are from Ecuador. That's pretty much, I am the child of Ecuadorian immigrants and very much, it's weird because like my parents were very like ambivalent about me like growing up Latino, but they were also ambivalent about me like assimilating into Canada and whiteness. But the thing is the fact that like I grew up eating like plantain like every day, and like every single food that I eat is not as like, you know, like I think like my favorite dish is like fried fish or plantain and rice and beans. And like every single party, like CELIA CRUZ is playing, and like your basics, Mark Antonio Solis, you know. So like it was very much like they never left Ecuador and such. So yeah, I grew up very, very Latino in that aspect and stuff like that. So yeah.
I am curious about like your parents. Like what's their story? Like how'd they grow up? What brought them to Canada?
So my parents, really funny. My parents are really cute. They met in college, and I'm very jealous of them because I am 23 and very single, and my college relationship didn't work out for shit. Both come from like very working class families, and my dad was like a lot more poor. My granddad on my dad's side, he was a musician. He was a frontman for a band. He sang boleros, but he was also a radio show host and like did a bunch of other stuff. And my grandma Charito, she was a nurse. And then on my mom's side, I actually don't know what my grandma did, which is really dumb for me to say. She did like a bunch of different odd jobs, I think. No, they grew up in Guayaquil. I think my mom grew up in Pascuales, and my dad, specifically, I don't know where my dad was living. So, yeah, they fell in love in college and stuff like that. My dad left to Canada, and he was making money. And then it's really funny that he actually sent my mom's engagement ring in the fucking mail to my mom. And then he came back, married my mom, took her to Canada. And then 3 years later, my sister came out. And then 3 years later, I popped up in the scene. So they're both teachers, but my dad actually wanted to be a lawyer. My mom wanted to be a journalist. Both of their parents kind of like swayed them away from it, being like, there's no money doing those types of jobs. So they became teachers, and then they were only making like $5 an hour pretty much in Ecuador. And then they came here, and now my dad's a superintendent. My mom's, it's a very like stereotypical, like I come from a very stereotypical like working class Latin family where it's like, my dad's a building superintendent and my mom's a cleaning lady, and I say that proudly. But it's a very working class, really blue collar. My mom was also like a waitress and a factory worker and stuff like that. So like, yeah, I come from a very it was weird because like my parents are educated and pushed me to have an education, but I also come from like a very working class background and stuff like that. So yeah, and they wanted me to be they wanted me to be a lawyer and engineer, and I did not do that.
And so I am curious, like, why did your parents go to Canada? Why weren't they scammed into going to the US like the rest of us?
I think it's because we had a friend, or there was somebody that we knew that my dad's family knew, because almost my dad's entire side of the family is here in Canada, in and around Toronto. They sent my tia Rosa first, and again, like this was immigration before 9/11. So like you could sponsor like your third fucking cousin and they'd come through. So I think like we just happened to have somebody that was here, and I'm very grateful because I am very very happy. I think as a kid I was like, I wish we moved to New York, and now I'm like, fuck that shit, bro. I need my healthcare. I need my fucking cheap tuition. I'm still paying my student loans, but like I've seen y'all's prices and it's fucking scary. So yeah, that's why they went to Canada and not to the States. And again, when I was a kid, I was like, fuck you. I want to be from New York. I want to be like, yo, I'm Paul Daniel. I'm from the Boogie Down Bronx. But nah, I'm from Toronto. I got Drake, you know? It's great.
I'm from Chicago originally. So
nice.
So I've been to Toronto, I think, once.
Okay.
I actually loved it. It reminded me a lot of Chicago. Like I would move there. Like I really liked the city when I visited. So I'm curious of like, what's it like growing up there? Like, what was the childhood like?
It was cool because the thing I think what people don't realize about Toronto is that Toronto has boroughs like New York does. So we have 6 boroughs. When we first immigrated, the majority of my family. So like I lived on the border of Toronto and Vaughan. So pretty much like, but it was weird because that ended up making my life really weird because like I'd be too suburban for the city kids, and then I would be too city for the suburban kids. And the thing is that like, especially like, there's more Latin immigration now because of what's been going down in Venezuela and Colombia and stuff like that. There's been like another wave of like Latin immigration, but the first wave was like in the 80s and the 90s, and there wasn't like a lot of us in the first place. And a lot of, and I think the most popular jumping point was like Jane and Finch. And like the way, and the way that I would describe Jane and Finch is that it's kind of like, it's a working class, it's a racialized working class community that dumb white people will give a bad rap because they hear both those things and they're like crime. And so take whatever apart from whatever city, and so yeah, first we were there, and like growing up it was weird because like I didn't have a lot of friends, so my life was spent in the apartment that my family lives in and my grandma's apartment in Gene and Finch. My experiences were just kind of like cut to there, and I always felt like really othered because the fact that it was kind of like I was like the only Latin kid around. I was the only Latinx kid around, so like I really never felt that like I could really make any genuine connections with people. I always felt like I was different because I was like this. I was the one Latinx kid living in a predominantly Russian, Jewish, Italian, Filipino, Korean, Chinese neighborhood. Like those were like the big racial groups, and like I had friends, but like it was hard to kind of like make those connections. And I think like, but I think like growing up though, when I became a teenager, I spent like a shit ton of time in downtown Toronto because like I loved it. And like my favorite place in Toronto, I've been working in this one neighborhood in Toronto called Kensington Market, and it's like really bohemian. It's like every single culture in the world, and not just like global culture, but like you could have like pop punk meets rap meets rock and roll meets like spiritual white hippie people meets like a bunch of like different types of immigration and stuff like that. That's kind of like for me, like my home away from home in Toronto is Kensington Market. It's like one of the most like beautiful places in Toronto. And then like I want to like move there like once I'm, move out of my house, which I'm in no rush to be moving out in, or kind of. But what I love about Toronto is that it's like a very like it's eclectic and it's really multicultural. Like I think like if you've been here, like you'll have like some like weird postmodern architecture next to like something from something that's like 1800s Victorian, and like even if you walk down the street, you'll have like a dumpling place next to like a fish taco place next to like like a Jamaican Italian fucking like fusion restaurant where they sell like pasta and jerk chicken. Toronto makes no sense, and I think it's the fact that like I think the side of Toronto that's become popular has been obviously like that OVO Drake aesthetic, and very much so. But I think like people don't see that like very like eclectic, wholesome, fun part of the city and stuff like that.
I always like to get a sense of people in high school. So like 14 to 18, I always frame it in these questions. Who were you?
Yes.
Who were you pretending to be? And how do you think other people saw you?
You know what, man? Like, I was a weird teenage kid because I remember being like 15 years old and calling my friend Julia, and I was like, I would call her at like 11 p.m. and I'm like, Julia, do you think I'm a good person? I had like a really like insignificantly significant relationship at the beginning of grade 9. It made me really challenged, like, who the fuck am I? And I really needed to figure out that question. I think for me, like I was a giant, like I was really loud because I was really excitable because I just really loved being around people and making friends. But I also didn't have any friends because I think like I was very overwhelming to people and stuff like that. And also just kind of like, I think like when I was a kid, you could really get the sense of like, this kid doesn't know who they are. And I was still really much developing. There was a lot of like things that I had to unpack. And like, I was very much in denial of my artistry. Like when I was like 14, I thought I was going to be a lawyer or engineer. Like I thought that was my life goal and stuff like that, not to be like a director or a writer or anything like that. So I think I was very much lying to myself that I was like the math whiz kid nerd type, and like, and not like, an artist and stuff like that. And also like, I think like I was like on the wrestling team for no good fucking reason. Things like I played a lot of soccer, but I think like the only reason I played soccer was like because I would have something to talk to my dad about. And I also like something physical, but now that I think about it, like I like basketball a lot more than I like soccer now. and also just the fact that like I was just so unaware of like my depression and my anxiety, and I just felt like this ball. I just didn't know anything that I was doing. Like I didn't know who I was. I didn't know who I was, and then I got lucky that like my dad let me do drama classes because he thought like that'll be great for when you want to become a lawyer. And then what ended up happening was that I went to an art school, but I was like in the regular part. So I was in like regular drama. Then there was like a specialized drama for like, you know, the advanced one. And then like they ended up inviting me to like audition for the advanced program for the last year and a half of school. And that was kind of like the beginning of me actually becoming an artist and stuff like that, because I love acting. And then after that, like I made this realization because I remember I got like a 95 in advanced functions one year. I remember like I would be so nervous every day. I'd wake up with diarrhea in a queasy stomach, and I wouldn't eat breakfast every day because I was so worried if I'd understand like the math lesson. And also back then, like I didn't know I had ADD, so like I would have to study from like 3:30 to like 11 and get up like 6 o'clock, 6 a.m. and then study for like another 2 hours before I went to school, because like that's how much like I needed to study for things and stuff like that. And again, like I just thought I was working hard, but not because like, you know, there was something that like there was an underlying issue that had to be addressed. Again, like I got this 95, and like this is a 95 that like I bled over, that I fucking cried over, that I was nervous over. And then I was like, yo, like I genuinely don't give a shit. And also like I went through like my first bout with like I think I knew about my anxiety since I was 8 years old, but I think I went through my first bout with like, I think there's differences for me. Like there's depression and then there's like suicidal thoughts. And it was like my first bout with suicidal thoughts in grade 9. And like straight up, the only reason I didn't like do anything silly was because I hadn't watched the Avengers yet. And I'm like, I gotta make it till the fucking Avengers. Again, there's the cup. I like superheroes, shoot me. But I think like I'm grateful for that experience because it really challenged me like, okay, what do I need to do that makes me happy and fulfilled? That's gonna like make me want to live. But that's the weird thing. Like I was a 14-year-old kid being like I think at 14 years old, I was like, what the fuck is my life's purpose? Because I need to find this shit so I don't kill myself. That's what I'm saying. Like, so teenage, like it was really weird. I was figuring out. And then like grade 11 came. And then I remember like I dropped math and sciences and I'm like, yo, I'm doing a yearbook, photography, film, and drama. And my parents were not happy with that at all. Those are like, this fucking condo became fucking like World War III up in here. Like we were like at each other's necks. Like, dude, like it's a weird because like your parents go from like, you need to go to school, you need to go to university, and then it's like, we're not paying for your applications, we're not driving you to orientations or anything like that, or open houses. It was a really weird time because I think in like now I know of my infinite wisdom is the fact that like my parents kind of like abandoned, you know, my parents are very like tough love. They're like, we were pushing you to see how much you actually wanted this shit, you know, and as a very Latino response instead of like actually fucking supporting your kids. But you know, in the way that you should. But again, like, but the weird thing was the fact that like I'd end up going through so much bullshit in college that like the bullshit that I went through in high school, like that sense of abandonment, it was really weird because that sense of abandonment led me to make a lot of bad decisions in college, but also getting over that sense of abandonment gave me a lot of like strength to kind of like get over a lot of stuff like that. So I think like, I know how I didn't answer the questions properly, but no, high school me was like this nerdy kid who would wear bow ties because he liked Doctor Who, loved superheroes, loved soccer, would write songs for girls that he liked that never give him the light of day. I think for me, like I was really big, like I'm a really giant nerd, and I know here, like you see the Spider-Man poster in my mug and stuff like that. And the reason like I have this shit up here because like I love putting this shit up here in my room because like it wakes up and it reminds you of like, okay, cool, like I'm always that 5-year-old kid who like loves Spider-Man, not in the way that like I'm obsessed with it, but more in the way where it's like remember who you are, your morality, your joy, your optimism, and stuff like that. Because like when I went through really tough times, especially in college and high school, I was like, you know, when you were that 5-year-old kid wearing Spider-Man pajamas, you were like, you know, the world was your fucking oyster. And like, that's the energy you need to bring. Like, you know, like if I'm a 5-year-old child and I can fight Willem Dafoe, I will fight Willem fucking Dafoe. And yeah, so I think in high school, I was confused. I didn't know who the fuck I was. And I was trying to figure out like what was my life purpose, and I found my way to film, thank God. And also, but then it also set me up for another 5 years of absolute fucking bullshit, because college, I will tell you with my chest, was the worst 4 years of my life.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. Like, what did you do after high school? Like, did you have a plan? Did things go according to plan?
Yeah, it was really funny because like so there was two film schools that I applied to, because I applied to like all like the regular programs for like political science and like criminology and like pre-law. I got into like everywhere that I wanted to go to, and like I went into like one school called Queens, which is like one of the Ivy League schools here. And like my dad's like, he's emotional, but he doesn't cry. And supposedly when I was at rehearsal for a play, I got a call from Queens, and like he cried when I got the application. And then I was like, hey, Pops, I'm going to. There's a distinction between like university and college here. So university is kind of like is like theoretical and academic and scholarly, while college is like, working with your hands and stuff like that. And my dad, the plan since I was a child is go to university, right? And then I was like, hey, I know I got into like the big Ivy League school, but I'm going to go to college for making movies. He was not very happy with that, and then I didn't. And then there was another university here called Ryerson that was like that has a really good film program. And then again, like, but I'm also happy I didn't go there, because what I needed to go to was Sheridan, the college that I went to. That's way more hands on, and like I really know how to like conduct myself on a set. That I think I picked up skills at Sheridan that I don't think I would have picked up at Ryerson. But I really want to go into Ryerson because like that's what like. For me, it was like, this is the option that'll make my family the most happy. Like, this is the best, like, midway. And I didn't get in. And then my mom looked me in the eyes and she like, this is a sign from God that it's not done. This is a sign from God. You're shit at what you do. And so then I went into college and I felt really alone, really abandoned. I went to Sheridan, and Sheridan is like, a little bit ways from Toronto. And it's like the film school that all like the kids from small towns would go to. So the thing is that like I went from multicultural Toronto to white, and I like in Toronto, I'm like, okay, I speak Spanish. I listen to salsa, like this is my culture. We all have cultures, and then like going to Sheridan, I felt like, oh my God, but I've never seen one of the Mexicans before. Godly. And yeah, and just small town white people, I got mad love for you, but sometimes y'all fucking ignorant. It was hard. It was hard because I never felt more othered in my life. I think like every racialized person goes through this thing, especially racialized people who have to like navigate white spaces, where you're just like, yo, there's a bunch of dumb white tomfoolery happening here, and I keep getting gaslighted by this entire environment, and I just need like someone who's not white to be like, yo, like shit's fucked. There was this one faculty member who I had this one film called Here We Go, and it didn't screen at the end of your screenings because like it was a rom-com with a black couple, but the whole point was this supposed to be like a fairy tale telenovela type vibe. So the narration was in Spanish, and then the reason it didn't get screened was because he said the audience members won't understand why there's Spanish narration on top of a black couple, because black people don't speak Spanish. And that like tore me the fuck apart, because I was like, yo, like this is the first time that like me wanting to express myself in my culture is like legitimately holding me back because of fucking ignorance. Because I'm also there being like, have you never watched the baseball game? And like it's just dumb ignorant shit like that. And then I try to make my other movie Turtles and Maple Syrup, and then I got a note being like, I don't think Latinos go through this type of racism and stuff like that. Then there's this other project that we did where like there was this co-production between like a school in Atlanta and a school in Ontario. They were like, we're looking for pitches, and like and it was like about two Syrian refugees. They were twins or something, or their brother and sister. They get separated, and like one's in Atlanta, one's in Toronto, and like they wanted me to like, and they gave me the pitch, right? And they gave me and three other kids a pitch and stuff like that. And like obviously they gave the pitch to the two brown kids, right? So I pitched it. So my brown ass was like authentic enough to get the pitch, but then when it came to like choosing the director, like they went for a white girl and stuff like that. And I remember it's really funny because what they told me was that it's like, your directing's not there yet. You lack a tonal consistency, which is really funny because I would then win my first award for directing at the Toronto Youth Shorts Film Festival. And they told me, we picked you to win the award because of your eclectic style. But like, that's the thing, man. Like, and that's the thing, like, white people don't understand the art that we're trying to make and where we're informed culturally. So it was just kind of like a really shitty relationship. I had 2 ruptures in my left eardrum, constant ear infections, lived in a moldy basement, depression, anxiety, coping with that in not super very healthy ways, racist faculty, just feeling belittled and lesser than, and feeling crazy, and just being away from my family, away from Toronto, just being away from a safe space, and like, so many things went wrong during that time. And yeah, it was just like, it fucking sucked. Yeah, it fucking sucked. And it took me like, I think it took me like a good year to bounce back from it, because I think there was like a hot 8 months where I was like, I have quit film. Yeah, like, I'm done. Like, I'm not doing this anymore. So yeah, that, it was tough. It was really tough. Yeah.
If there's a recurring theme on this podcast, is like people that came from very diverse like neighborhoods and sort of go to college, and it's like a rude awakening. But I think for you, that's sort of what like caught my attention about your films. Because I've seen a couple of them. The one that caught my eye was Do Turtles Swim in Maple Syrup? And immediately I was obsessed with the film when I saw it. I don't even know how I found it. I'm just constantly trolling the internet for writers. And I found the film and I was like, okay, let me watch it. And that's what it immediately caught me. It was like, oh, this is like someone that like knows the real and is like actively trying to like wake people up, but also like tear it apart.
Yeah.
And that's, I highly recommend everyone watch your film, Do Turtles Swim in Maple Syrup. I'm curious about taking all of that like aggression and just frustration and that like you're gaslit to like your artwork.
I think like that's the thing, because like now, I think as men of color, I think like to survive navigating whiteness, we need to be a lot more aggressive than we actually are. Machismo dictates that we are aggressive and lack emotion to protect ourselves. And whether that be from our own emotions or from interior or exterior motives, whether that be from your own family, whether that be from like people who want to do you harm. And I think like when I was making Turtles, there's this one part that's like, I'm celebrating my culture, I'm celebrating my family. It's also a love letter to my mother. And then there's another part of me that's like, yo, like, this piece of shit teacher, this piece of shit person who like really did me wrong, I was waking up with anger and hatred every fucking day. Like, I was like I was making Turtles with a fucking vendetta and stuff like that. And I think you could feel that anger in the film. And I just made another film where I think it was even angrier. But like, and I think now it's the fact that like, I don't like writing from that place. I don't like writing from anger and hatred. I like writing from like love and joy and optimism. And I think those things are present in Turtles. But like, I think there was a lot of aggression and frustration that I had to let go of and like let out, you know, because I feel like I would describe the experience of Turtles was like trying to play like, you know, like it was my thesis film. So it's like, you know, it's like trying to play through like like an NBA series finals, like final series of like a broken ankle. And like, that's how it felt. Like, I was in so much pain, but I was like, yo, like, I have fought 6 years from this. I have gone from like, I never thought that I was ever gonna make a movie when I was a kid. Like, I loved films when I was a kid. I loved fucking movies, but I never thought that I'd make a movie, because again, like, why would I? I've never seen like a person like me. And I think like back then, like, all we had was like John Leguizamo and Antonio Banderas. And frankly, like, I didn't even think like I'd be like tree number 2 in a class play when I was a kid. But also like a lot of determination, because I'm like, you know, like, and also there's like anger and hatred towards like, you know, I'm remembering like, yo, my mom said this is a sign from God that you're shit at what you do, but also making a movie that's about my relationship with her and the good parts of it. And I was like, no, I have to prove it. And but also it's like about, and I think the funny thing about Turtles is that like in the film, it's about like this kid who needs to become a doctor, and it's about him proving to himself that he's enough to like apply to college. And but the thing is that film in a meta way is like answering the question, am I good enough to be a director? So I think like that same energy is very much there. And I think like it's the beginning of me finding like my style and who I am and stuff like that, because I think like I think it's gonna take me like a few years to like find my like really find my stride and like really get to a place where my potential is at. Because honestly, like I look at turtles now and I think of myself, like I think I only like tapped like 10% of my potential of like who I am and who I can be and like what types of movies I can make and stuff like that. And but yeah, man, like a lot of anger, a lot of frustration, but it also came from a sweet place. I remember like when I was writing turtles, I was like, I want to make a movie that like a 5-year-old me could sit down with my grandma and watch, you know. And I think there's a whimsical, I don't want to disrespect my movie by calling it cheesy and corny, but like there's like these very childlike elements to it and stuff like that. And I made it very much through like a childlike lens. But I also think it was also the fact that like it was this really weird period of time. I was saying, I think turtles really was the beginning of me saying goodbye to my childhood in a way, because like I made turtles and it's really, and again it's going to sound really cheesy, so it was a combination of making turtles, graduating, and like graduating, I think for like a lot of children of immigrants, like that's the end of a gigantic narrative. Like that's the end of like the first narrative of your life, right? Like, you know, this is like season 1 of who you are is now finished, right? And then I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? And then again, cheesy enough, and then like Avengers Endgame came out, and like that was kind of like the end of like that journey cinematically. And then also my grandma Charo died. So it was like these 4 things that happened in like less than a year. That, yeah, and I'm really grateful for turtles, because like because it also opened up a lot of introspection of like, what does it mean to be Latino? What does it mean to be Latino in Canada? What does it mean to be Ecuadorian? Because I find like really funny is the fact that like I feel more Latino than I do Ecuadorian. And I think that's because like I'm jealous of Americans, a lot of Americans, not all of them, in the fact that like, you know, if you are Puerto Rican and you happen to live in New York, you have a bunch of Puerto Ricans around you. Same thing if you're Dominican. If you are a Mexican in Texas or Cali, you have a bunch of Mexican people around you. If you're like Cuban, you got a bunch of like, you know, if you're in Florida, you got a bunch of Cubans around you, right? Like you have like, not only are you surrounded by Latinos, but you're surrounded by people from your same country. Like, and I remember like when I went to visit Cali for a film festival for Turtles, this was like the weirdest experience of my entire fucking life. I went into they were selling conchas, and this lady, I walk in and then like she sits up straight and she looks at me the same way like my aunt looks at me, being like, are you gonna fucking say hi? And it was the first time in my life that somebody looked at me and expected me to be a gentleman because of the way that I look. Because like in Herban, it's like, oh, it's not one of these fucking dumb white kids. Like this one knows what he's doing. And I guess, and I think in Turtles, it was very much about like me like not feeling like I fit in anywhere in Toronto. Because I don't like, I love Toronto, but I don't feel like I fit in Toronto at all. I don't feel like I fit in Toronto. But when I was like in LA, I'm like hearing like mariachi music and bachata and merengue, and I'm like smelling smells that I would only smell inside of my fucking home. And I was like, oh my God, it's like a Latino utopia here. And I never have felt more comfortable in my skin, because I think for the first time in my life, I was in like, because I feel like here in Canada, especially Sheridan, like people will be like, one of the most natural denominators, right? For me, be like, oh, he's Latino, right? But like when the feeling I was in LA, it was like, oh no, he's like, you know, he's a dorky kid of long hair. And I was like, oh yeah, that's what I am, you know? And it's like, I love my culture, you know, I love it. But it was nice to be surrounded by a bunch of people who aren't coding me with all their stereotypes and emotions, and they're allowed to get through a bunch of bullshit to see me in a different way. And I think like Turtles is based in that anxiety, because again, this the only reason I got to LA was for the film festival for Turtles. It comes from that anxiety because like I don't feel like I fit in anywhere in Toronto because I'm Latino, and I think where it's like really here where it's like because here's the way that I describe it. I think like as an artist and as a person, I think Turtles is indicative of me at 19 trying to find the ground under my feet. But I think now my art is transitioned and like, how do I learn how to fly? And I know that sounds like a really egotistical, but what I mean by that is the fact that like the evolution has been, I need to stop trying to figure out where I fit in and just figure out like, who am I? And how do I celebrate that person? How do I love that person, you know, and say what that person has to say? Because the thing is that like, I think my work is like it's eclectic and it's all over the place. And I think for people who don't have something to latch onto, it makes no fucking sense to them, and they don't see the quality of it either. But I think some people who can see who can see who I am through the film can see like a very young man trying to understand himself. And I think like when you watch that film and like you see it, especially from like a Latinx lens or a racialized lens, and you see all the different influences and inspirations that come of it, there's like, like I feel like Turtles as a package about the film itself and about me is like there's so much more about this person that they're trying to fit into like these 11 minutes. And I think that's what I'm trying to do. Like I think Turtles for me was kind of like cracking open the bigger picture of who I am. It was really funny because I think I thought Turtles would be the answer, and especially being a thesis on the end of graduation, but it ended up just providing a bunch of questions, and in a good way, but also in a way where it's like I was like, after I graduated, I was having like I was out of my body for 6 months. I was on autopilot. So yeah.
No, and I think you've described exactly the feeling watching the film for me, because it's like a very like first gen story. It's a very like immigrant story. It's a very like, for the people who haven't seen it, it's like this kid has his college application on his shitty cell phone. It gets stolen and he's got to get it back. But on top of all that is like all the systematic oppression, all the bullshit, everything. And I think that's what resonated for me. It was like, there's this brown boy walking out in the world and he's got to worry about his phone because of his mom and family and like expectations. But he's also got the entire world that's like not really looking out for him. And he's just trying to find his footing. And that's real. And that's why when I saw the film, I felt the like egg cracking. I felt the growth. I felt like now the story begins. But we followed the character through that. And from the other films I've seen of yours, it's been like very much like your deal a lot with like systemic racism, with like larger structures that are only trying to keep us down. But I love that feeling you described of like being in LA and feeling like home a little bit. Because that happened to me. I was in LA and I was hanging out with too many white people, and it wasn't until like 4 years in I like walked into this Mexican like theater space and I was like, oh crap, I'm home. Like, and this happened like I've been in London just like for work, run into Latinos. They see me walking past this door, they're like waving at me. They're like, come in, like we found another one. Like, but it is that feeling, and I think that's a lot of feeling that like
London, England, you say?
Yeah.
Oh shit, eh? Oh,
yeah, and I was like, I didn't know we were out here. Hi.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that vibe where it's like you look at someone and be like, where you from? Where you from?
They saw me out the window. I was walking by the store. But that's also like a very like human and like Latinx and like POC perspective to be like, where am I fitting in? Where do I go?
Because I think like because that's what I'm saying. Because I think like I think in America you guys have more lines between your Latinidad. You guys are like, you're like, I'm Puerto Rican, but like they're Dominican, there's beef right here or something like that. Like I'm Peruvian, but you're Chilean. And it's still present in Canada. But it's more the fact where like here it's like, yo, you from where the sunshine is, bro. You family. You gotta stick together. And that's what I love about Latinos in Canada, because of the really beautiful, beautiful thing, dude, is like Toronto has a little bit of a crab in a barrel mentality. Not a little bit, very much so in the art space. And it's very hard, again, to break out of that OVO aesthetic. And I think it's going to take us a little bit of time for racialized artists in Toronto to break out of just making success and making commercial art. And the powers that be and ourselves don't allow us to. There's just the company called Barrio, but they also run an Instagram account called like Toronto Latinos. And like, they're kind of like this Instagram account where it's like, yo, this is like, where Latin shit's happening in Toronto. And then I sent my movie to them, be like, hey, can you check it out? And then like the guy edits out the kitchen scene, posts it on his main feed, and tags like every single like important Latino person in Toronto that he has connects with. And I was like, fuck. And I was getting so much random love from like random Latinos in Toronto. And I was like, whoa. And I went from like, I wanted to quit because I made this movie with a bunch of white people. But then it like hit me in the fucking head because I'm getting these messages where it's like, hey man, can like, keep making movies. And then I was like, oh wow. But I think for Latinos and other races as well, races and cultures, there's this sense of importance that like, yo, I'm also the caretaker of my people's stories. And like, that's when like our art crosses into like intergenerational trauma and our ancestry, you know? Because like us making art is like an act of resistance from like the colonialism that happened hundreds of years ago, right? Because like we're not supposed to be celebrating our culture and who we are and like telling our stories, right? Because like, but art's emotional history. It's the proof that we were here, and just sitting in the fact that like it's because especially here, like in Canada, nobody gives a shit about Latinos. Nobody gives a shit about Latinos. There's no grants for us. People aren't looking out for us and stuff like that. Like nobody gives a shit about us. Nobody does. And they'll throw in your face like the success of like American Latinidad. But it's like, again, as I said, like the Latinx experience of a kid in Toronto is drastically different than like a kid in Texas. And that goes for every type of Latino, right? For wherever you are, it's drastically different. So it's like, so yeah, it's great. It's man, it's just so, it's weird because some days you're like, I just want to make movies, and then some days you're just kind of like, I am my ancestors' like resistance. I am my ancestors' miracle. You know,
Yeah.
I am proof Francisco Pizarro couldn't kill me.
And it's like we all feel it. Like everyone I talk to, they're like, "Oh, are we all dragging this thing along with us that we're trying to?" And at the same time, thinking like, "Oh, white people don't ever have to think about this or do this," and like, why am I not allowed that? Maybe I am, maybe I'm not, but like, you know, it's a whole journey.
It's intergenerational trauma. That's the thing, right? Because like white people don't have to deal with that baggage. Like that's what I was saying, right? I feel like and again, this is my like cis hetero fucking perspective on things, right? But I think like a lot of Latin men and Latin boys, for example, when they first start making art, I think it gets dismissed because like we're still very much like steeped in our machismo and making very like blunt masculine stuff, and then we get dismissed and then we quit. But the thing is that we need to continue making art to like get into our subtleties and get into like our emotions and our femininity and grow that and heal those parts of ourselves that have been taken away. Because the thing is that like there's a thing where I think machismo is different than toxic masculinity, because machismo is not only the toxicity within the inside of ourselves that we've given ourselves, but also it's a defense mechanism that we've created because of the way that we're treated by white people. So I think it's just the fact where it's kind of like, and why is that? Because of intergenerational trauma. Yo, like of course, like a kid's gonna like your art's gonna be emotionally stunted because your parents fucking hit you, right? And like, why do they hit you? Because we learned that all the way back when fucking like the Spanish were hitting our ancestors. That's how we discipline people. And that's what I'm saying, where it's like, and that's why I get really sad about young Latin boys, because like you're forced to become hard as stone, and no one's there to like hug you and cuddle you and bring that emotion and subtlety, right? Then like white kids can make these experimental films at like a really young age, right? But like the racialized experience is so based in reality. And I think it's like, that's why so many of us make movies like Turtles, that coming of age immigrant story. And again, like I'll be the first one to say, like in a few years, like people are going to get tired of it. Like straight up, people are going to get tired of it, right? But that story in a way is a part, like I think like that type of coming of age story is different than like white kids and like trying to get out of suburbia and like Ladybird shit. Because I watch Ladybird and I'm like, fuck you, I have real women have curves. But I think for us, it's like as writers, we need to write this story because we need to get that shit out. We need to get that shit out so we can get to like a more higher concept, more emotional type of stuff and stuff like that. So that's why it's like the intergenerational trauma is a burden. It's a ball and chain that we need to break and understand and unpack, and it takes us time, you know. And I think that's where, and also I think the disadvantage that we have as Latinx writers is the fact that like there's not a lot of us to look at who've come before. Because again, it's like, you know, it's great. I can read a bunch of Pablo Neruda. I can be a bunch of fucking like, you know, Isabel Allende. But Isabel Allende, you know, didn't grow up in an urban center being the only Latino person. So there's not even a lot of art that's going to resonate with me, that's going to help me unpack. So that's why it's so hard for us to even get, like, it's so hard for us. Like, we don't have infrastructure in the industry to get a footing, but we don't even have an emotional structure to like really get us like building, like we're building the ladder as we go. And like that is the scariest and most beautiful thing at the same way, because again, it's like, you know, like every single piece of art a Latino makes is an act of healing and resistance. And then, yeah, that's why I really appreciate like your words about turtles. Cause like, again, like you see that. And I think other people be like, oh, this is just some like random, like fun adventure, whimsical thing. But like, no, it's like, this is me being like, like I'm trying to like figure where the fuck I live in the world. And I just so happen to like, action adventure films and superhero movies. It's a lot. It's a burden. Yeah.
And so, like, what have you been up to since you graduated? Like, what is the update?
Okay, so since I graduated, I received a $10,000 grant. Me and my friend Celia Naomi Hernandez. She was the sound person on Turtles, recordist, editor, and mixer, and she was also the picture editor. I'll get to, also the picture editor and my sound editor on my latest film. So after graduation, I quit school. But I was a social worker for the last 2 years of school, and I still am a social worker. Me and my friend Silvia Naomi Hernandez, she's half Mexican, half Colombian, but born in Canada. No, born in Colombia, immigrated to Canada when she was like 8 years old. And me and her got together and we got a grant to start a film program that's specifically geared towards racialized and underserved youth. And it's through an anti-colonial lens. And the fact that we're teaching guerrilla filmmaking, but also like giving kids a pathway as opposed to like, how do you learn film in a way that we're also like unpacking your intergenerational trauma, because that's what a lot of art programs don't do. And that's what racialized kids need to speed up their process. Right. So there's that. I got a grant with another friend, my friend, Christian Anderson. She's half Jamaican, half Chilean. And we're trying to get this web series off the ground called Plátano Parables, which is like Broad City meets like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air in Toronto. And it's like we're both acting in it as well. And it's like, it's like, Gen Z is trying to make it in the city, like that type of vibe, and like this, like our cultural spin and stuff like that. But then again, it's a show based on like transformative justice and kind of like dealing with like things that like coming of age things specific to like racialized people, where it's like, how do I deal with the guilt of like dating white people? That type of jazz, right? And like, or like kind of dealing with the fact that like, as a young person of color, whenever you get an opportunity, it's like, did I get it because I deserved it, or did I get it because they need to fill a quota? I am currently trying to write the feature-length version of the Turtles and Maple Syrup. I also just finished one film that's kind of like, it's about to be released. It's a part of an initiative with the city of Toronto called Reawakenings, where they're trying to like decolonize different historical sites here in Toronto. So they paired 10 filmmakers of 10 different historical sites. I got this one site called Zion Schoolhouse, which was the first public school that was free. That was made by this guy by Edgerton Ryerson, but he was also the guy who came with the idea for residential schools. So I made this film called Miss Re-Education of the Invisible Yet Furious Five. And that whole movie it's a horror thriller that ends in a music video about kind of like decolonizing education, but the harm of Western education has on children of immigrants and racialized kids and stuff like that. And then I also have this other idea for like a Toronto Spider-Man parody, but like I think it'll work. It's I don't want to drop it because I feel like I don't want to jinx it. And I also had this other pitch called Abuelita Frita, and then that was the grant that got denied. But I will say this in my chest: fuck them. Y'all don't want to put me on. Fuck you. I'm gonna find another place to be on and stuff like that. But yeah, that's what I've been up to. And I think, but also on an emotional tip, it's just been like healing from college and figuring out, stepping back into my power, reconnect with my emotion, with my sensitivity. I think like I went out of college and I was like, yo, like I've been in aggression playoff mode for like 22 years of my life. Like I need to know how to chill and be sensitive again. Like I'm sensitive and I'm soft, but like I need to figure out to bring my art from like, I've been very much steeped in my masculine energy. And right now I need to give more attention to my feminine energy. How do I heal that? How do I give that attention? And because I think like when I look at turtles, I love turtles, but like I think it lacks a sense of grace. I think that I know that I have a sensitivity. And again, like that comes from like, aggression being a defense mechanism for us and stuff like that. So I think trying to celebrate my softness, hugging my teddy bear ass and stuff like that. So yeah, that's what I've been up to.
It seemed like it was a struggle to be like, okay, I want to be like a filmmaker. Felt like the odds were stacked against you. I'm curious of like where that storytelling started. Like when did you know like there was something you were good at, like something that naturally came to you that you wanted to actually do it?
I always thought I was shit at making everything art wise. I thought it was shit. Well, I mean, I started writing because I couldn't afford therapy as a teenager. I think as many do. And I first started writing poems, raps, and R&B songs. I remember one of my first songs that I wrote was for a girl that I wanted to get her attention in grade 9. Nothing happened from that. But I had this one friend that we would write raps and stuff like that. So I'd write. I don't. And here's the funny thing. I knew how to write raps when I was a teenager. I can't write raps anymore, which really sucks. And I was writing songs, and like he was a rapper, so he would write the verses, and I would rap like the R&B lyrics and stuff like that. And then I had this really great teacher, Miss Rotundo, in grade 11, and like we had this film project for the media class, and like she was like, "Yeah, you're the screenwriter, you're the director, just go." And like she instilled a lot of confidence. My film teacher for grade 12 was not the most supportive person, and he didn't see me. And I think that's the weird thing about being a young artist in school. Like you're gonna have people who don't see you, and they won't support you, and they'll crush you before you even start. And that's what I'm saying. Like young men of color. I think, again, you have to look past the exterior machismo bullshit and get to them, especially like, you know, young teenagers, young boys. Like, you got to get to them before they become like hardened asshats. It was a perfect storm because I was also in my acting classes, and thank God for acting because like that demands that you tap into like everything in your vulnerability, right? And it was the first place where I had to tap into that vulnerability. So I think like where I started writing when I was 13, like songs, and then I took a writing class. I started to write a screenplay for my final assignment, and I wrote a reboot for Spider-Man back when it was still Andrew Garfield. And in my defense, okay, I pitched it as like John Hughes meets Spider-Man, which is the same pitch, the same pitch for Homecoming. It was one of like my formative moments was that the base idea was like the Kingpin is like trying to make a serum that makes people into like mutants. But then in the comics, like 2 weeks after I finished the script, there was a storyline in Ultimate Spider-Man where like Kingpin was like trying to make everybody Captain America with like a bullshit superhero soldier. And I was like, oh, so if I have the same ideas as like my favorite writers in comic books, like I must be doing something right. And it was that. But really, honestly, it was what made me make the big turn was trying to find my life purpose and going through mental health things. And then I watched The Hunger Games, and I thought it was so fucking bad that I decided to watch Daredevil because I'm like, I need to know like what's worse, Daredevil or the fucking Hunger Games. And there's a scene where Matt Murdock, he's getting paid in salmon. I don't know how the fuck you pronounce salmon or salmon. And because he has no moral vacuum. And I realized like if I'm a lawyer, I'm gonna be that because I need to always be helping people. Like and that's why I make movies. I make movies because like I'm trying to understand myself. Like I'm trying to make sure you have a good time and you have a fun time. Because like for me, like the really reason I'm here when I was suicidal, I would be like, you know, you gotta keep trying, like Peter Parker and Rocky and George Bailey, you know? And like I look up and like, you know, I have these characters like the Iron Giant that are like ingrained in my fucking soul. And like when a kid gets a good character and a good story, that story stays with them and motivates them, it inspires them, it pushes you to heights that you never did. It gives you a sense of belief. And like that's why I make movies. Like my goal is that I can give a little kid like a Spider-Man and like they'll believe in themselves more because of the character than the story that I brought to them. And it was really funny thing at that stage of my life, like I'd watch Sherlock Holmes and want to go into like forensic science. I'd watch like Star Trek and be like, I want to go into physics. And then I'd watch Daredevil and be like, oh, I want to be a lawyer. And then I realized like, oh, if I keep watching fucking movies, I keep changing my mind. I should just try and make movies. And so that's kind of like where I started. But when I went to film school, I didn't have a lot of confidence. So I thought I was going to be a camera person and an editor. And it wasn't just the case like my friend of mine, Karina, pushed me to like write and direct because I always wanted to write and direct, but I was like, no, I'm not good enough to write and direct, bro. And then I realized writing and directing, I have no patience for any other facet of film other than writing and directing. Because directing allows me to be in every facet of film, but I don't completely steep in it becomes boring, and it's just fucking fun. So like, so it wasn't for me. It wasn't like this is what I'm good at. It's more like this is the only two things that I want to do. And then so I just kept going with it. And I don't think it was until like I don't think it was until like recently that I'm like, yeah, I'm a filmmaker, I'm a writer, I'm a director. You know, I can say that confidently. You know, Frank, I'm like, yeah, no, I think I can confidently say for like a writer at the age of 23, like I think like I have a better than average. I'm not great and amazing. I'm not phenomenal, I'm not a fucking generational talent, no way it's saying, but like I work hard, I learn, you know, and I think like I think I show potential, and I tell myself that, you know, I ain't shit, but I'm better than average. So that's what I say about myself.
Yeah, no, and that's what watching Turtles showed me. I think when I finished watching that, I was like, oh, this is someone to watch. Like, this is the fact that you're making films like with that content and that feeling and that sort of subject matter at such a young age already. Like, you're already going through the bullshit most people are still shorting out, and that's why I'm a fan, because I see someone who's young who like has the motivation to like make these films, but also like sort of knows what the hell they're talking about, and that is rare, especially at your
Oh,
age.
thank you. Yeah,
So that's
I
why,
made that at 21. That's the thing. Yeah, I'm 23 now.
exactly.
That's yeah.
But exactly like that, all that is just going to triple fold as it goes on, because it's like, oh no, this is like a solid foundation. Like,
I
you
appreciate
just,
that. I really need to hear that after getting rejected from a career. Sorry, it's funny. It's funny. Positivity. Yeah. No. Thank you. I appreciate that. It really hits, makes the heart warm.
so who are some of the writers that you admire? So these could be friends, peers, heroes of yours, people you creep on Instagram, just whoever's storytelling is exciting you right now.
Let's see, my friend Rebecca Ortiz. She's another great Latinx Latina Canadian filmmaker. She is also a producer, director, writer. She has a film called Abuela that's coming out soon. Going to give her that plug. But also, she is also a Canadian Screen Arts Award winning producer, which is like super, super cool. Giselle Bonilla. And what I really, she's a young Mexican actress, and she's a writer director. And what I really loved about her work was the fact, like, when I look at Turtles, right, I say like the issues that I have. Like, here's the thing: where I think Turtles can improve is that it's a fact of like I need to make more movies and get my technical ass up. But in the other part, these improve is the fact that like I just need to know myself better, right? But when I watch Virgencita and I see Joselle, and when I talk to her, I'm like, yo, this person knows who they are in this moment. So, and that's like right there in their film. There's no sense of confusing and trying to figure themselves out. Like they know. Yeah, Rebecca and Giselle I really look up to the both of them. Yeah, 110%. Yeah.
So where can people follow you? Where can they see your films? All that good stuff.
Yeah, you can follow me at Paul Daniel Torres on Instagram. That's my main thing. I don't do Twitter. I don't do Facebook. Everyone's invited. If you hear this and you want to talk to me, please message me, DM me, and we can talk. All my films are on Instagram, but like if anyone wants to see my films with like actual quality on a bigger screen, please message me. I will provide you a link and stuff like that. My new film, The Misre-Education of the Invisible Get Furious 5, will be dropping sometime soon. I don't not know. And yeah, that's where you can find me and such. Yeah.
I like to have my guests help me title the episode.
Mm-hmm.
The prompt is a blank Latinx writer. And in that blank, you can put as many words as you want. You can move them all around. It's just something that for you to sort of like define yourself, your writing, this conversation, just whatever comes to mind. And I also use it as an organizing tool. So when people see the title, they can be like, hey, that's like me. I should check this out.
I think mine should be a existentially optimistic Latinx writer who loves CELIA, CRUZ, and PLATANOS from Toronto.
Perfect.
Yeah. It's really funny because like I don't really look up to writers that much or like other filmmakers very much. It's really weird because like my two main go-tos are like Spike Lee and Edgar Wright are kind of like I think are the two filmmakers most present in my films. But then also the only reason I'm attracted to them is because everything stems from CELIA CRUZ, is what I tell people. My art is CELIA CRUZ. That's what I say. It's big, it's in your face, it's hopeful and stuff like that. So yeah.
And with that, I want to thank you so much for being on the pod. This was such a fun conversation. I'm so glad we have Canadian brethren.
I know. There's like not a lot of us, but we're here. We're holding it down, bro. Yeah, no, and really, I really appreciate you reaching out and doing this because it makes me feel like my career is like doing something, man. I don't know. Yeah, so I appreciate it very much. And all the kind words really from the bottom of my heart. And obviously the work you're doing with this podcast is super fucking important. So again, because nobody gives a shit about us, so we need to give a shit about us. So yeah,
exactly. Listen,
yeah,
you're like the person I made this podcast.